Oh yeah. Let's see. Kululu. Who else? Austria. Oh my goodness, Austria, such a silly character. What else did I do? I was in Mushishi. I was in Bacchanal. I've done about 250 different anime.
But can you do them in 60 seconds?
I can, all of them. Sounds like this. That's it. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. It's incredible, isn't it? The magical voices of Chuck Huber. Call this guy. His name's Chris Sabat. So he gave me Sabat's number, and I called him.
And he's like, hey, yeah, hello?
And I was like, hey, man, my buddy Brad Jackson said I could audition for the Dragon Balls.
And he's like, oh, yeah, actually, it's Dragon Ball Z. Like, you pronounce the Z like it's a word. Yeah, we were confused about that for a while, too. But, yeah, so you say, like, Dragon Ball Z. Like so you say the Z. Yeah, man, come on in for an audition. That'd be great. You got time, like, today or tomorrow? Like, tomorrow at 4 o'clock tomorrow? Would that be good?
And I was like, yeah, man, 4 o'clock tomorrow is good. And he's like, okay, great. And then he hung up. And I was like, I wonder where I'm supposed to go. And then he almost immediately called back and he's like,
Oh, man, I'm totally sorry. I forgot to tell you where to go. You know that bank building, like off of 820 North Richland Hills, like the Comerica Bank right there off Roof Snow? Like, we're in the first floor of that. So, like, if you can, like, exit Roof Snow and you can get through, like, the gas station. That way you don't have to go through two lights. It's sort of like a cut you can make to the parking lot. You'll see us. We're down on the first floor.
like, okay, man, sounds great. Because I was from Chicago, and auditions were things that were set up by agents and casting directors. It was not set up by, like, a guy with a wildly deep voice telling me how to cut through a gas station. So I was convinced it was some sort of scam, and I got to the bank building, and I was like, do I need to open an account to audition? And they were like, what? I was like, is this Funimation? They're like, no, you want down the hall there's a door. And I was like, okay. And I went, and you sort of went through this warehouse of boxes. They were doing like VHS videotape fulfillment there. So you kind of went through this like hallway of boxes to this sort of rinky-dink studio in the back. Really good whisper room, really good mic, crappy broken table with one of those reversible tiger blankets on it where the tiger's like, you know, white on one side, dark on the other. You flip it. That's what was on the table for sound attenuation. In the booth, they had like a music stand with a t-shirt paper clipped to the music stand so the script wouldn't make noise. And I walked in and I was like, okay, I'm here for the...
He goes, oh, great, man, great. Here, do you think you can do this guy?
And he handed me a Garlic Jr. And I was like, I'm going to push you into the dead zone.
And he's like, oh, man, that was awesome. That was really, really good. That was great. Do you have, like, time to record it, like, right now?
And I was like, did I get the job?
He's like, yeah, man, yeah, you were great. No, that's awesome.
You want me to record it right now? He's like,
yeah, we got a kind of a deadline thing we're trying to get.
And I was like, all right, sure, I'll record your super professional anime right here, right now, as this short alien dude. And I did, and it was a lot of fun. We had a ton of fun. But then I was done after like 3 hours. I think I recorded for 3 hours the first time, maybe 2 hours. And then I was leaving. Thanks, guys, shaking hands, you know, because it was a blast. And then he like rips a piece of notebook paper.
He's like, oh, man, hey, give me your address so I can send you a check.
And I was like, sure. So I gave him my address on this little ripped piece of notebook paper. And then like 2 weeks later, I got a check. And I was like, okay, it's fine. It's all good. I don't care what we do. It was goofy and fun. And guys were nice. It's a check cleared. Let's go. Game on.
That's the important part.
Game on. Suddenly, I'm a big fan of everything you do. Because suddenly they had work. And you got to remember, like back in 98, this was 97, 98. I was very poor with children, a wife and some children, very poor. So, you know, I think my first check was for $105 or something for like 3 hours of work. And that was insane money to me at the time. I was like, well, this is, I need to be every character in this show that I can be. And so, it just went from there, and I ended up doing, been doing it for 25 years now, 24
Oh, never
years.
mind. I see it. It's over.
Long time. It's like it never ends, and it keeps getting more popular. That's the fun part. COVID was really good for that. All of a sudden, a bunch of normal kids were like, nothing else to watch. I guess I'll watch anime. This is amazing. And suddenly, I got my little nephews and nieces who they were never into anime. Suddenly, they're like, "Are you in My Hero Academia?" I was like, "Yeah, I am." They're like, "That's cool." I'm like, "Yeah, it is cool." That was my intro into the voice acting world. I had been an actor prior to that in Chicago, and I'd done voiceover as an actor in Chicago, but just commercial voiceover. Like, I think the first commercial I did was for Nintendo. It was for Aero the Acrobat. I walked into a studio. They put the script up for me, and it was 2 words, "Bite me." So I got in the studio, and I said, "Bite me," like 17 different ways. And they were like, "You're done." And then I made $15,000. I was like, this is what I need to be doing for the rest of my life. That was back when there were only 3 television stations and cable. So you got broadcast pay, and then you got cable pay. So it was 2 different checks. But so, and then you'd split off and it'd do radio too. So they'd turn your TV spot into a radio spot, and then you get paid again for that. They just paid me for like a year and a half. And I was like, when it was all done, I was like, this is a dumb job. I said, "Bite me" a bunch of times. I got a new motorcycle, which was stupid because I didn't know how to drive it.
It worked for Homer. Not Homer.
I bought the motorcycle, and I was in the alley, and the guy was like, "You good?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good." He's like, "Okay, see ya." Wonder how I drive this thing.
How do I start?
I think I had gone to, this tells you how long ago it was. I think I had gone to the library to look up how to drive a motorcycle. So I knew it was 1 down and 3 up, and neutral was somewhere between. So I ended up getting into first gear, and I drove all the way like through alleys because I was on the west side of Chicago. So I just took alleys like all the way back to my house. And then I started learning how to ride a motorcycle. It's very dumb. I don't think I've ever told that.
You gotta have some sound effects when you do that, like driving down the road. Gotta have a cat in there somewhere. There's always a cat.
There is. Ed, what was your first? Voiceover role?
First voiceover role.
Yeah.
First voiceover role. I was working on bulletin board at the time. Bulletin board system, computerized. I was one of the first gaming boards in Virginia. BBS. You guys, anybody here familiar with what BBS is? Bulletin board system, basically, or service. We call them system, but some people call it service. I was working on that, and I get a phone call, and early cell phones were like the Nokias, about this big or so, and you're like, "Hello," and it sounds like a tunnel, noising. Remember those?
I do remember.
Oh
those.
yeah. Guy's like, "Hey, what's up?" I said, "Kind of working on my BBS right now. Can I call you back?" No, you don't want to call me back. I got to tell you this now, okay? Look, I'm doing voiceover work down here at Anamigo, down in Wilmington, and we kind of need some extra small parts. I was like, "Oh, okay. How much does it pay?" First thing I asked, "How much does it pay?" You didn't love that part? "How much does it pay?" He goes, "I'm not sure, but you can make some money off of it." I was like, "Oh, okay. Sure, when?" They set me up, and I had to drive down to Wilmington and stay a couple nights down there. And the first one I did, and this story is not as funny as his by a long shot. I've got to work on that.
I've been practicing mine for a while.
I know.
I got my Sabbath down pretty good.
No, you definitely got Sabbath down great. So I go in, and Anamigo is pretty much like Funimation was.
Right.
Walk through a huge warehouse, you're going, because they got VHS like everywhere. And let me tell you something about you guys, one thing you don't realize about VHS anime. You used to get 2 episodes of VHS anime in a little, sometimes plastic type container box. $49.95 for 2 episodes. That was in the early to mid 90s. Can you believe paying that much for it?
Yeah.
And back then, that was worth more than it is today.
Yeah.
We didn't have inflation, at least not like now.
Yeah.
So there was a big difference. So the pay was actually pretty decent for doing that because, $50 basically for 2 episodes. And they'd put out 2 and 2 and 2 and 2, and all of a sudden you just spent $1,500 on a series. And that's not a lie. That's a fact.
That's true.
So I go in and I do the sound. Worked out okay. But it was just small bit pieces like, I'll get you, Ranma. You just wait. You're mine. Of course, nowadays, unless you find the original Animigo, you're not going to hear that voice because when Viz got it, they recast everybody, which makes sense because we were early on. We were the very cusp and beginning of voice acting. And I just got it because somebody I know called me up and said, we need more people. Same type of thing.
Very common story.
Yeah, that's
especially at the beginning because it was not the worldwide phenomenon that it is now. Back then, it was a badge of shame that you hid and shared privately with kids at school.
Yep.
I had my one of my nieces say, "Oh, she's such a poser nerd," and I went, "Poser nerd? Poser nerd? That's not possible. Nerd was the thing, and posers they posed to be other things. Nerd was just you just accepted it. It wasn't something you tried to do." She's like, no, these cheerleaders acting like they like anime, and they don't know. And I'm like, they're poser nerd. No, everybody's welcome on Anime Mountain. Don't be like they were. Don't be exclusive.
One of my best friends that did that early on. Unfortunately, he passed away 5-6 years ago. Daniel Tereski, Dan T. I don't know if anybody here even knows him. He did Crusher Joe, the original Crusher Joe voice. I think that was redone too. I'm not sure.
They redo a lot of stuff.
Yeah, but he did the original, and he's one of the reasons because Peninsula Anime Club down in Southeast Virginia. I lived in Richmond, but I used to go to VTAS, which was Virginia Tech Anime, and I used to go to Peninsula Anime they were based out of Newport News. So I used to go to all those, made a lot of friends, and got a lot of connections too at the same time. And a number of years later, and I was still doing some small projects, mostly, and I started Anime Mid-Atlantic, the convention. Before that, I actually was one of the founders of Anime USA. So I've done a lot of anime stuff throughout the years, and I started with Katsucon at the beginning, worked security for them the first year, and then moved all the way up to director of operations and con chair assistant at one point. But then I retired because AMA was getting way bigger at that point. By the time we got to year 10, we were a pretty good size. We're busting our seams where we were, but we still stayed there a few more years. But I did a lot of voice acting along the way. I did some stuff for Bang Zoom through World of Warcraft Online. I've done a number of indie video games. Matter of fact, I was just talking to you about the one I was working on. I play an old man in this one. This one's coming out in the future. It's an indie. First thing in the game is I'm sitting screaming at kids going, "Get off my lawn, you damn kids!" Play an old guy. I'm missing more hair than I am now. I have a crossbow, a double-barrel shotgun sawed-off, and a pit bull. And it's a zombie invasion, so you figure it out. Yeah, it's going to be a lot. You get to play the kids. I don't know yet. They're still. That'll be me.
The
Basically,
internet should be helpful.
Yeah, basically, because they haven't assigned a name to it yet. I have a project name, but I'm not allowed to tell you that. NDA. What I tell you is about all I can tell you at this point. And
he probably wasn't supposed to say.
And I probably wasn't supposed to say some of that, but yeah. But it should be fun. You're supposed to be able to play the kids. I'm just the trainer. But it should be fun. And movie-wise, my first movie I did, I was actually 6 years old.
Ooh.
Yeah, there was a Christmas special they were doing. It was actually a local cable company that did it. I was in that. And then later I went on to do Roller Coaster. Anybody ever see that movie, the classic? No? Darn. I was in Roller Coaster, and then later on I did True Colors, Finnegan Begin Again. That was filmed in Richmond. True Colors was actually filmed in Richmond, too. It's supposed to take place in Georgetown, but it actually is filmed in Richmond in the fan. And I've done, Turn, Washington's Generals. I was in season 1 and season 3. Different characters, obviously. I was playing a printer in season. I'll show you the picture of that one. A printer in season 3, and a middle-class English businessman in season 1. Yes. Yeah, I'm in 2 seasons. It's only like 1 or 2 episodes. That's it. I'm not throughout it. Small bit parts, and I've directed stuff. We did a CW regional for Southeast Virginia and for Central Virginia called Wishes. I played 2 different days during that year in both markets, and it won the demographic. And they said it's the best demographic for the local market for the last 10 years when we did it. But then we wanted to do more. I had David Castle do music for us. If you're not familiar with who David Castle is, he's the composer that won big awards for Raging Bull, the music from that, and for various other things. There were some connections. I didn't know him directly, but I got introduced to him, and he did it for us. And it was Hallmark style music. I thought the music was better than the TV show. Sometimes that happens, yeah. It was pretty good, though. And I've done lots of other stuff. I do photography. I'm writing a book. First book's called Dreams of Reality. I'm hoping it'll be out. I want to get it done this year, so next spring sometime, I'm guessing. So hopefully by next year, I'll have the books out and can sell them. This is actually my second book. My first book was written years ago, and I just never got around to doing another one. But this is the first of a 3-book series. So the Dream series is what the series is going to be called. It's alternate reality, so sci-fi. Yes.
Got a couple questions.
Sure.
Now that anime is established and totally professional, and nothing weird ever happens.
Sure.
Sure, you go on believing that.
I'm curious about how you develop a voice. Do you get a script in advance and you develop a voice for it, or when you get there, does the director say, I want a raspy voice, I want something preppy?
It starts with the audition, so we'll get auditions from the talent coordinator, which have like a little mini Bible on the characters that are being auditioned. So it'll tell you front artwork, synopsis of the show. You flip it open, picture of a character, name, description of the character, 3 or 4 lines, kinds of descriptions of what's happening in those lines. And so you flip through the file that they send you, and you're like for me. Generally speaking, I only audition for the one I think I'm the best for, because I know where my voice lands in the different genres. So I'll audition for the one I think I'm best for, knowing that the director knows me, knows my voice, and is going to go, well, maybe not that one, but let's bring him in for this other role. But yeah, you start with I teach an online voice acting class, and one of the exercises that we do is something called and it's for creating characters quickly. It's called bad impressions. And what you do is you take a character you can't do an impression of, and you turn it into your own original character. For instance, Emperor Pilaf is my bad impression of Edith Bunker from All in the Family. That's literally where he started. I was like, oh, Archie, oh, like I started right there. And then you relax out of it so you're not stuck with Edith Bunker. But it gives you, something to go on when what am I doing? You know, like you can kind of pull little mannerisms and little things you remember. And it just kind of directs your voice. Because the key to good acting is specificity. And if you don't have time to create the character and create all their physicality, which affects the voice, then you have to invent a way to do it. And bad impressions is a great way to do it because you're specifically doing something the whole time you're acting. You're attempting to do an impression of someone you can't really do. Sometimes students will take the class and they'll do a good impression, and I'm like, bad. They're like, what? It was great. And I'm like, no, it sounds exactly like it, but you got to make it your own. So you start, and that's like placement and rate and tempo and maybe dialect, oh, I'm from Queens, like you start with those elements and then you relax into your own sort of version of it. And then, what usually happens is if you have a character that's going to be in 400 episodes or something, many of the directors you'll record that first episode and they'll go, okay, now you'll get like halfway through or 3/4 of the way through, and they'll go, now you've found the voice. Now the voice is placed. Let's go back to the beginning and record the first 16 lines again now with the new, because you're kind of green at first. You're like, I don't know what I'm doing. And then you settle into it over the course of an episode or two, and that's where the voice lands.
I'm going to bleed on out. This is supposed to be your panel now.
Oh, all right. I didn't realize.
Yeah.
All right. You were just jumping in on it?
No, we're supposed to do the introduction stuff, but
Oh,
we now float into your panel. So
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna bug out and let you handle it.
Oh, it was like an opening ceremony. Oh.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll be around when I want to talk.
Now I got to watch Turn 2.
So the question I have is, like, the vocal cords are muscle like anything else, right?
Hmm.
How is, I mean, you're talking like you were saying, I was a drill sergeant, right? They used to tell us, like, before we go out and start using our voice to yell at privates, we have to make sure that you're using your voices in the right way, the tone and all that stuff, otherwise you just strain it and you're done. It's like
Mm-hmm.
a marathon runner blows his hamstring. So what are some of the things that you do, even when you're not working, to make sure that your vocal cords, I don't know if that makes any sense, kind of stay in that path so that when you do have to do something like 400 episodes and you're constantly talking, doing 3-hour sets, do it without pulling a hammer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the first thing to remember is that your vocal health is a direct reflection of your physical health. It's one of the first things you'll notice when you're saying, "Oh, I'm sick." You know, like your voice starts to weaken or go or get raspy. It's very, very typical. So, one thing being just physically healthy, staying away from, shots of tequila till 4 a.m. and filterless Camels. Although my first agent swore that I needed to smoke filterless Camels. She's like, "We want you to get all the voiceover work." And I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. But yeah, being physically healthy and physically strong, that's all that muscular support all around here. And then it's like any other artistic physical activity. You have to be specific and relaxed so that you're not just screaming with emotion, because you're gonna add power and volume that doesn't have the sort of physical emotional support for the voice. But if you're truly connected, in class, one of the things we talk about is I was trained in the Linklater technique, voice and speech technique, and her technique is freeing the natural voice. And when you're a baby, you can scream. And I know, having raised eight children, you can scream for 4 hours with the croup from 1 until 5 a.m. I remember this with one of my children, who shall go nameless, Sebastian. He was the worst. He was. It was just croupy all night long, and he just scream and scream and scream. And they can do that. They can yell and scream like that without losing their voice for so long, because they're perfectly relaxed. Although they're in duress, they don't have any tension about their voice. They're just purely communicating. So the more relaxed you are and organically connected to the text, the more likely you are to preserve your voice and keep it from getting hurt. It's like anything else. It's like lifting with your legs when you're lifting. If you think about what you're doing and you're connected to it, you're less likely to be injured. And then the other thing we do is we protect our voices with the timing of how we do things, because we'll get to a session and they'll say, well, let's save all these fighting reactions for the end. Because there's some things you just can't fake. You just have to scream bloody murder. That's what the expectation for the genre is that people are really going to scream. They're not fake screams. You're just really going to blast it out. So you save it till the end, and then you blow your voice out, and then you rest for a day after that, basically. Mostly it's the worst in video games. Video game sessions, and they pay you more for them for that reason, because you do shred your voice. But you'll get 6 pages of an Excel spreadsheet that are all like, dying while on fire with knife and skull, dying while on fire with knife and skull with foot being eaten by alligator. And you're like, oh, you're trying to communicate all the different screamy ways of screaming. It is fun. It is fun. Yeah, it's a good job. I've done roofing in Texas in the summer. I know what real work is.
All right, I've been dying to ask this.
Sure.
Since I watched Star Blazers when I was a kid.
when there's English voiceover for Japanese anime, you have to do a lot of the reactions.
Right.
There's a verbal reaction. Why is that? What's behind it?
I don't know. A lot of times, my grandma used to tell the story, and it wasn't her story, but she'd pretend it was her story. The story was about the Easter ham, and the tradition in her family was that they cut the end off the Easter ham and cook it in a separate dish. And everybody had done that. Finally, one of the grandchildren, was like, "Why do we do that with the Easter ham?" And they're like, "I don't know. Go ask your mom. Go ask grandma. Go ask great grandma." They finally get to great grandma, and great grandma's like, "Oh, well, my oven was too small, so we used to have to cut the end of the ham off." But they all had bigger ovens now. I think a lot of times the style of acting gets established by whoever started it first. And there's, I was watching. And the reactions are getting more, well, it depends on the anime, but the reactions in general are becoming, especially on more realistic shows, becoming more realistic, naturalistic. I was just finished binging Arcane, which is, I totally poo-pooed it because of all those things that are like, this is a Dungeons and this is a League of Legends, this is a Halo. Sometimes I was like, you're going to suck. And then somebody I trusted told me it was great. And so I started watching it. I was like, holy cow, this is great. And they had really, really subtle reactions, just little tiny subtle things so that you're not having to it's like, that's not how that really works. But for the comedy animes, I suppose it's useful. But yeah, honestly, I don't know. But we still do them.
How is that written when you're directing?
Oh, so it'll be, and I did script adaptation for years. So for years, so you for the script adaptation, you'll have the Japanese translation, which is not good English, not good script writing, but it tells you what the information each character is saying to each other. And then as the script writer, one of the first things you do is you watch. Usually what I do is copy and paste that translation into the spreadsheet, and then you start to mark all your times out, and then you're just listening. And you're like, what did he do there? He went, because he got nudged. And so it's like open mouth reaction. That's all you have to do, OM react. Sometimes we used to give lots of description, like open mouth, disgusted at the state of the restaurant, sneer, and it's like, there's too much directing going on. So it eventually became you say open mouth, closed mouth, or clenched teeth, or mouth not shown, MNS. So you label the reactions like that. And usually you just say react or exert or punch. Sometimes you want to let them know, like, oh, this is a physical fight reaction because it's a little stronger. But you usually just preview it and listen to what the Japanese actor did and then do something fairly similar to that. We tend to be a little more subtle than the Japanese. Just slightly.
I know most of actors don't like to say what is their favorite character. So I'll ask you, what was the character you had the most fun with?
Well, I typically have the most fun voicing Emperor Pilaf. We always laugh a ton. His reactions are always hilarious. He's always in ridiculous situations. And, I get to do all these wild things with my voices. But we had a show called Shin-Chan where I played Hiro the father. And we laughed more recording that show than we did, I think, any other show in the history of the world. But like my favorite character, I didn't know. I was a big theater guy and a film guy. I made movies. The anime was a side hustle I did for cash. That's all it was. I didn't know it was popular. I liked anime in college, but I liked, Akira and Cowboy Bebop, and these were very different from Dragon Ball Z. Dragon Ball Z didn't seem like what I knew of as anime. It was a fighting anime. I wasn't used to it. So I didn't really pay attention to it. I didn't think it was a big deal. I didn't know people were watching it. And then we did Yu Yu Hakusho, and first of all, I thought I didn't get cast because Hiei doesn't come in till like episode 5 or 8. I think it's 5. And they record 4 episodes at a time. So they had given the director the first 4 episodes. So it was like 6 weeks and I hadn't heard anything. And I was like, oh man, I was hoping I got in that show. And then they called me and they're like, yeah, you're in the show. You're Hiei. And so then I recorded a bunch of Yu Yu Hakusho. And then at one point I was up at Funimation and one of the PR people was like, we're doing a convention in San Diego called Comic-Con. I'm like, oh, I'm aware of it. And they're like, we'd like you to come out and we're gonna do we're gonna do some stuff out there. Would you like to come? They basically said, do you want to come to the convention? I said, yeah. And they're like, we'll pay for you to go out there. I was like, great, give you a hotel. I was like, amazing. And so I went, and I had worked as an actor at conventions before. You know, like an oil manufacturing parts and equipment company will hire you to sit at their table and be like, this is the best Klinkenschlauber that ever has been made. And you have like a script and you pass out pamphlets. So it's promotional. You're an actor, you're, you know, talking puppet for whatever company you're working for. So I assumed that's what I was going to do out at Comic-Con, that I was going to be like, watch Yu Yu Hakusho. It's a great show. I play a character named Hiei. I thought like I was going to do 8 hours a day handing out pamphlets or something. And I got there and you know, they talked to the Funimation people and they were like, okay, well, you have a signing from 3 to 6 today. And I was like, a signing? And they're like, yes, your autograph signings from 3 to 6. And I was like, oh my God, you guys are so stupid. Oh my God. No one's coming for my autograph. You're idiots. And they're like, I don't think you want to. I was like, okay, yeah. Okay, so it's going to say like free autographs and maybe people will come up and I'll sign. I was like, okay, this is kind of stupid. I felt embarrassed. Like nobody wants my autograph. And then we got in the room and it was like one of these huge rooms with all these tables and booths in it. And my table was right here and the exits were behind me. And we got there and I sat down. I was like, see, there's nobody. I was like, this is so stupid. I was like, okay. And they were like, no, Chuck, that's your line. And there was like this line all the way around the room. I was like, what? And they were like, release the hounds. And I was like, oh my God, what just happened? And so like this whole line like shifts around and comes to my table and I'm looking at it. And the first girl comes up and she's shaking and crying. And I'm like, oh my God, what is going on? And she's like, my dad, when he was dying of cancer, we watched all of Yu Yu Hakusho together. Hiei was our favorite character, and we wanted to meet you, but he died last month, so I can't. I was like, so I start like my first autograph. I'm like crying and holding it. This is terrible. What are we doing here? And I took like way too long with her, and they finally had to be like, Chuck, you cannot spend a half hour with each person. And I was like, okay, you're right. But this one was important, I think. She said she sat in line for 4 hours and her dad died. So give me a minute. And then I had to learn to be a little bit quicker not quicker, but, you know, efficient so that I could get through everybody in a timely manner. And, you know, I'd never signed my autograph before. So there's somebody posted one, this is a while back. They posted it on like Facebook, like a card I had signed, and it looked like my 3rd grade signature from the top of my, like Chuck Huber, 3rd grade English. Oh yeah, I'm great. So then you kind of like learn to like do something cool with your whatever, make it faster, I guess. But so there's some old, but for that reason, Hiei is kind of my favorite because the first fans I met were Hiei fans, which was fun, and they're pretty rabid, those Yu Yu Hakusho fans. As you well know.
Flip side to that.
Sure.
You get this character, and on the inside, you just score like you just writing your scene. Like, no, I hate this character. I hate doing these kinds of things. You have a character like that?
I have people hate, but like Shao Tucker from Full Metal Alchemist. People hate him, and they playfully hate me as well for it. Like it's a very strange job where you're like, what do you do for a living? I sit at a table and occasionally people tell me to burn in hell. I was like, oh, okay. Really? That's what you do? I'm like, yeah, that's what I. But I used to have this little Nina Ale, and for those of you who don't, well, no, I won't spoil it. But I used to have this little Nina Alexander plushie. So it was the dog daughter, and people would come up and be like, "You were Shell Tucker," and I'd be like, "Cow goes moo, cat goes meow, dog goes Edward, kill me," and they all cry. They fall on the ground, and I go, ah! And they're like, "Stop." So I purge emotions that way. I think I make their lives feel better. I actually think it's trauma. Like if you've never seen that, like it did something to kids, and parents are like, cartoons, you can watch cartoons, that's fine. Kids are like, you know, 'cause the parents didn't know like there were serious themes in Full Metal Alchemist. And so kids at a certain age, 10, 11, 12, had something done to them in a story that hurt them in a way that was traumatic. And so the other day, or the other 2 conventions ago, I usually have like 10 Shao Tucker prints. It's always one sicko who comes up and is like, yeah. I'm like, oh, here you go. But someone was cosplaying Shao Tucker with a big Nina Alexander. You know, you just buy a big dog and stick a wig on it. It had glowing eyes though too, so it was super cool. But for whatever reason, because he was at that convention, I sold out of all my Shao Tucker prints because I think he was going around traumatizing people, and they were having a reaction, and to solve it, they had to buy the print. And I was like, I see opportunity here. I see we should torture people at every convention together. But he's the fun one. I thought it was funny when I recorded it. I was like, ah, this is awesome. And then I watched it and I was like, I'm a horrible human being and must be destroyed. I'm terrible. Why did I do this?
The dog, where they're like crawling around on all fours, and you'll watch. They'll have like a young girl, his daughter or somebody who's role playing it, and you'll just see full-grown adults just fall to the ground and just like start crying. Going, it's too soon. Please just go away. And they do it on purpose, right? I watch videos, and I'm telling you, like 30 or 40 grown adults are running down the hallway in the opposite direction. They just don't want to see it. Yeah. Like, I have never seen.
We heard some people. Yeah. Yeah. It's great. It is great. It's great. It's a lot of fun.
We all share the same.
That's right. We do. A lot of us do. Any other questions? Yes.
You've been in the industry for a really long time.
Yes.
What would you say is the one thing that changed the most since you started Wise?
The respect from because like when I started, it was looked down upon as an actor to be doing voice acting for anime. It was like not, because it wasn't really run by actors or artists. It was kind of like, hey man, yeah, I'm doing some anime. I got my degree in opera singing or whatever, you know. Sean Schimmel comes in with his like French horn. He's like, I like playing the French horn and playing Goku. You know, it's like, because he was a professional French horn player before he was Goku. So it wasn't really, they weren't in the in crowd, as it were, of artists and actors. So I got heat kind of for doing, people like, Funimation, that's stupid. That's some stupid stuff. And then it became very successful. And now I have friends who, because I directed for a while and I'd bring friends in, and it's a very specific art form. It is not like regular acting. It's not even it's even more disjointed than film acting. In film acting, at least you get that one, you know, really good master shot where you feel like you're playing the scene as you would in real life or on stage. And then you cut it up into little pieces and you take it from a medium, and then you come in for some pun, whatever. And you're like, well, let me just get this last line. So you're doing 2 lines at a time or whatever. But with voice acting, it's very disjointed. you never know if you're going to have the other actors in there. Sometimes it's just silence and you're reacting to nothing except what you read off the page. So it can be a very frustrating experience for actors. And I think a lot of the really good actors in the Dallas-Fort Worth area tried to do Funimation, but were frustrated by it because they felt they were better than it, and they felt like you should take my advice, and they're like, your acting advice doesn't matter. I want it to fit the flaps. It's got to fit the flaps. So it's sort of the tap dance routine you have to do on the visuals to make sure it fits. So it's feels a little constricting as an artist, because you're there just to serve the visuals and the story. It's not really about you or what you can do. If you just say the words, you can do no harm to the anime, so long as you just kind of stay out of the way. Most of the mistakes that get made in dub work is actors working too hard or doing too much. Well, sometimes they're just bad actors, which happens occasionally. But so the respect that the industry has now, that it's a multi-billion-dollar thing that Sony bought, and like it's big business. People are surprised. They're like, "You must fly a private jet." It's like, no, we don't. We don't. That'd be great. But Texas is a right-to-work state. Just because I've done 250 anime, there are no residuals on it. So, $50 an hour and you're done. Here's your money. We'll collect the billions. You get whatever you get. And I'm not complaining. I think it works out fine for us. The trade-off we get is that we get to fly around the country and meet fans and sign autographs. And so that's our residuals, as it were. I always say that the fans are my boss. The people who run the anime show are not my boss. They aren't the ones that really support and take care of me. So, but yeah, it's when I was a big fan of Jamie Lee Curtis, and her son is a big One Piece fan. So she came up to tour Funimation and gave us a ping pong table. And I'm like, Jamie Lee Curtis gave us a ping pong table? What is happening? And then you start seeing like professional sports players with like DBZ shoes or something, or doing tattoos, and you're like, what? That's weird. What's going on? Yeah, it's strange. It's very strange. It is amazing. And a lot of my actor friends are, they tried to do it and couldn't do it. Now I think they kind of wish they would have stuck it out, because they're like, hey, that's a good deal now. And it's like, yeah, it is a good deal. It does have it being a big, huge thing now does come with all the other stuff that is attached to things being big and huge. It's all full of drama and people are like, it's so hard. And it's like, no, it's not really hard. You don't really have any right to complain. When things get big, you just suffer it. Like I said, I've done real work, so anytime I get to do conventions or voice acting, I'm a lucky guy.
So you mentioned earlier that you kind of get frustrated with the lack of direction and the booths. Have you experienced the character that you just had a difficult time sort of finding that voice? Is there how did you what did you do to sort of to fix that problem?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to. I think
just like
frustrated with directors. I'm not usually frustrated with the Funimation
No,
directors.
not the lack of, just like you're reading a piece of paper and you don't have that back and forth.
Oh,
It's
having the
just
other
like
actors around me? Yeah.
The vagueness of it. And
Yeah.
Trying to find that. I was wondering if you had any characters that you had difficulty with and then sort of had learned from that experience.
Well, we recorded DBZ Kai, which was basically a repeat of what we had done in DBZ. And so when we would record Kai, we would get to hear what we had done previously. And our skills and our attention to detail by the time we did Kai had grown so far from where we began. When we began like DBZ straight up, we just keep recording, keep throwing words up, keep going. we got it scheduled, and like we were just having fun and goofing around. But by the time we got to Kai, we'd hear those old recordings of ourselves, and we were like, wow, we can improve on this. We can do better now. So our skills improve. But like when you get to that situation where you're frustrated, and this is what I always say in class too, if you're an actor, if you're an artist, and you're not having fun, you're not enjoying yourself in some way, either through pain and sorrow or expiation of inner demons, or just joy at being able to yell and scream in a funny voice. If something isn't firing you as an artist, if you're like, I don't like this, your job at that moment is to get your compass out and point it towards fun, and start running. Like, what is fun about this? What can you enjoy about this? So whenever I struggle, it's usually not to do with, it's almost always internal. It's almost always something that's going on with you that you need to resolve. And that's, I tell people a lot, that's a lot of the reason why quote damaged people end up being actors, which is a common trope that, oh, you suffered a childhood, so you became an actor or whatever. Everybody suffers their childhood. But like, I think one of the reasons we enjoy it so much is because when you are acting well, to the best of your abilities, you forget yourself for a while. And I've been acting for 30 years now, 33 years. My God, 35 years? Wow. And I've had to act in all sorts of circumstances. Your father's dead, 15 minutes till curtain. And you're like, oh, okay. I guess I got to still do the show, or whatever. You just have to, you do that, and then you kind of erase your brain for a bit, and you finish the show, and you feel better. You turn off whatever it is that was rattling around up there, and it makes you feel better. And I think that's part of the reason people like acting. Sure.
So how often do you, if you want to stand up? I have a friend who wants to be a voice actor.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk to him about your class.
Sure.
How often do you have classes?
I usually do, well, I did them for about 8 years straight, almost every month. And then I during COVID, I even expanded more. I had a Shakespeare class and a demo class and a scene study class and an improv class, like 3 other teachers, and a business of voiceover class. And then I had been teaching, because I was always, a teacher was always my side hustle when I was just a regular actor. So I'd been teaching straight for almost 30 years. And I just kind of got tired. So I took like a year off of teaching. So I'm just now starting the classes back up. And I don't think I'm going to do them as often as I used to, just to keep myself ready to teach them. But I usually do them every other month, every 3rd month. I think my next one is coming up like September, October.
Okay.
I'm finishing up a class right now. I'll take a 3 weeks off and start filling another one.
Cool. Yeah.
But you can follow me on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. I always post stuff on there. Or you just send me an email. My email is fireflyworks@gmail.com. Yeah, and I send you information. It's a fun class. 4 classes, 3 hours each, 12 hours of instruction. We cover generally how to do dialects. We cover specifically British, sort of Eastern European or Russian, and then Irish. And we do monologue. There's a monologue in the last class. You memorize and do a monologue. We talk about some different acting techniques, playing the opposite, intention, objective, obstacle, sort of the standard tools of the actor trade. We do a lot of discussion of mental toughness and preparation for the job of being an actor. Because if you're a successful actor, you fail 97% of the time. So it's a grind for a long time. So it's all about, how do you keep yourself psychologically fit for that? We do something called a comfort challenge, which is where you push yourself to do something uncomfortable. We talk about subroutines, like figuring out what are my habits I already have and how can I attach habits to those so that I can drive my life in a direction I want it to go. Yeah, and everybody in the class makes a commitment to take their phone and plug it in someplace away from their bed so that you have to go to sleep every night without your phone in your hand, and you got to get up from bed to go get your phone so that you're not, because most of us go to bed like this.
Yeah.
Right? So like the screen is in your brain the whole time. It's good for you. Also, it's 30 days of work and thinking about acting and a life of an artist, and it just gives you an extra boost towards it because you're not sucked into social media. Oh my God, I can't believe they said that. I'm going to destroy them. Any other questions? I think we're almost at time. We are almost. Maybe time for one. No? Autographs? Yeah, if you want to do autographs, I'll swing down to the it's down the hallway and to the right. The dealer's room. Is that what it's called? Yeah. All right, thank you guys.